All right, three, two, one. Now, welcoming on special guest for today's episode, Mike McCall. He's had a long career in the sports industry. He's worked for minor league baseball and hockey teams, as well as some other teams all around sports. And we're excited to have Mike here just to hear a little bit about his story. I got to know Mike here recently in the Boise area, and it's just been a great relationship so far. So thanks, Mike, for coming on. We're excited to have you here and learn a little bit more about your career up to this point, and hopefully share your story with some of our listeners.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure to be with sports guys and get to talk sports and sports business.
Definitely. Yeah, that's how we connected right away. We just started talking about sports and a few common teams that we like. And as we talked more, I thought, well, that would be awesome if you were willing to come onto the podcast. And so here we are. We're excited to just hear a little bit about you. We'd love for you to start wherever you find fitting, but just talk a little bit about your sports career. I know you've served in a variety of different roles, and I know that Hunter hasn't gotten to hear kind of your story and career throughout the last few decades. But yeah, we'd love to hear a little bit about that and go from there.
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting. Like a lot of other guys and women, I grew up and, heavily involved in sports in the Southern California area outside of Los Angeles. And, I don't think I ever thought I'd end up in sports, but you love it and it's in your blood. It's a passion. But, I was fortunate enough to catch on with a company that manufactured scoreboards. So for the professional stadiums and arenas and also the major colleges around the country. And I found myself saying, wow, I didn't think I was going to grow up to be a scoreboard salesman, but it actually was the trigger for me and the entree that got me into professional sports, because what we would do, we would make the scoreboards and we would sell them to the professional teams all over the United States. And we were the number one scoreboard company in the country. And then we'd also go into the colleges and we would actually get letters of intent, and we would go out and sell the advertising that would go on the scoreboards. And that's turned into a big business now with Learfield and IMG, who own the rights to most of the Division I colleges. But in those days, in the mid 80s, it was the colleges were on their own. And so we got to represent a lot of the colleges, and I handled most of them in the Western United States. And so I also learned how to sell, sponsorships to these large companies that go, were sponsoring the scoreboards in the university. So it was a tremendous learning experience. I absolutely loved it. And from there, one of my clients asked me to come on board with them with their minor league hockey team and run their arena. And I said, well, I don't know anything about running an arena. And they said, no, we're gonna learn on the fly, and we're gonna use your experience selling and sponsorships. And so that's how I got started. And it was a very interesting time, because one thing just kept leading to another, and was very fortunate. Was part of that very first experience was in Tri-Cities at the Toyota Center in Tri-Cities, where we had the Tri-City Americans. We brought them down from Canada, and a quick side story there: two of our players that first year were first round draft picks in the NHL, Stu Barnes and Olaf Kolzig, the goalie. And
Wow.
they went on to 15-year careers in the NHL. And ironically, they both married girls from the Tri-Cities that they had met when they were playing for the Americans there. And
Wow.
so they're still married today. Both have families, and both have spent time in the last several years. Olaf was there for many years, kind of overseeing the team. And now Stu Barnes has gone back, and he's living there and with his wife and kids, and he's coaching the Americans today. So they actually went back and bought the team. So I think about 8 or 10 years ago, they bought the team. It wasn't doing too well, and they've really brought it really up to speed. So it was just so great to see some young kids that were 17 years old at the time playing for us, marry local girls, go off and have big careers. In fact, I did, one of my stops along the way was with the Dallas Stars, where I was the chief marketing officer, and Stu was actually playing for the Stars at that time. So I got to visit with him and get to meet his family. The kids had grown up. So that part of the fun and the experience of all that is seeing a lot of young people go on and make it, whether it's in sports or in the business world. And so from the Tri-Cities back in those days, I went to what was called the IHL, and that's basically the AAA. It's merged with the American Hockey League, which that's the 32 teams that are all the affiliated AAA team of the major league teams now. So I got to learn a lot, and I spent a couple of years, 2.5 years there in Indianapolis, and working for the league office and learning how a league operates. And I came into work on a Monday morning, and I had a phone call from Lou Lamoriello of the New Jersey Devils, and I thought they were kidding me. I thought they were kidding me about this note. And because I actually got married in New Jersey, my wife was from New Jersey, my son, was born in New Jersey. So to have the New Jersey Devils call me with my wife's relationship, and I think she was anxious to move back. So I went back, and he offered me the job to come in and be the vice president of sales and marketing. And talk about luck. The Devils had been really a poor organization for a lot of years, and in the shadow of the New York Rangers, obviously. And my first year there in 1994, our team went all the way to the conference finals against the New York Rangers, and lost to them in 7 games in overtime in Madison Square Garden. And the Rangers then 2 weeks later won the Stanley Cup. So that was a tremendous learning experience, because I was able to see what happens to an organization that gets so close. And really what I learned over the years is you don't win it in your first try. All these teams making a run, you've got to learn how to win it. And what I mean was going through that experience of losing, the taste in everyone's mouth, to see the players and the front office and the fans, and all everybody thought about for that whole next year was getting back at that level. And, we did get back. And in 1995, we won the Stanley Cup. And just the experience that I got to go through there, first of all, Lou Lamoriello is a Hall of Famer now. He's known really as the best general manager in the National Hockey League the last 15 or 20 years. And he went on to win 3 Stanley Cups and lost 3 in the finals. So he's been there 6 times, and he's now with the New York Islanders, and he's gotten close here a couple of times, 2 of the last 3 years. So I think they'll be back. But, just being close to him and working with him every day and watching, the process of what he goes through to build a Stanley Cup champion. And one of the first things he did was he hired Jacques Lemaire, who had won 10 Stanley Cups with the Canadiens as a player. And watching Jacques come in, and Jacques brought Larry Robinson, another Hall of Famer, and to watch them build this staff and how they go about building a championship team. They really took the blueprint from the Canadiens. And I remember the first meeting he had with his players, and I was invited, and you could hear a pin drop, these players, just hanging on his words. And he asked all of them, he said, I only ask you one thing, are you willing to pay the price? Are you willing to sacrifice yourself for the good of the team? And if you're willing to do that, this team has a chance to win a Stanley Cup. And of course, I'm thinking, come on now, this team has been really bad for a lot of years. They haven't ever gotten close. But it's, what he said to them stuck with them. And I think to a man, they all agreed they were going to do whatever it took and make sure that the logo on the front was more important than their name on the back. And so, an interesting story about that. The players definitely committed, and it was unbelievable to see what they did. And when we went and we had that, near miss in 94 with the Rangers in the Garden. And then when they came back in 95, they were all committed. Well, this is what Jacques made them all do for the playoffs. They weren't allowed to go home to their wives. They got a hotel in New Jersey, and when they were on the road, they were on the road. When they came home, they weren't in their homes. They were in a hotel. And that was part of what he said to them. Excuse me one second. And so staying in the hotel was giving up a lot, because they weren't seeing their wives, they weren't seeing their kids, they weren't, they had a 10 o'clock curfew. Their phones were shut off at 10, and that was it. And we went the first series, and we won in Buffalo, I think, or Pittsburgh, and then Buffalo, and then we had the semifinals, the conference finals against Eric Lindros and the Philadelphia Flyers, and they were favored, and it was a big deal. And we went down to Philly and won the first 2 games. And on the bus ride home, I wasn't on that bus, but as the story goes, the captains went to the front of the bus and said, Jacques, we've been talking, and the guys really feel like they need to get home to their wives and their kids. And, and Jacques, in his way, he didn't erupt. He didn't get upset. He just said, I only asked you one question. Are you willing to pay the price? And so then they stepped back and said, well, maybe we need to think. He said, no, you guys obviously got together and the captains came. So it's your team. It's your decision. And so they made the decision to go ahead and go back to the families. And sure enough, we lose the next 2 games at home. And so it's it's a 2-2 series. And fortunately, we went down and won game 5 in overtime. And on the players didn't say a word. They went right back to that hotel. And, then, 2 weeks later, we win that series and went on to then we played the Red Wings in the finals, and they were heavily favored. They had won the President's Trophy, and I mean, they were heavily, heavily favored. And we went into Detroit, won the first 2 games, and came back to New Jersey and swept them the next 2 games. So we swept them in 4 games, and then we got to, I got to go through an experience that I never had, and that was, how do you put on a party and a parade and an event for winning a Stanley Cup in a city that doesn't have a downtown? You represent the state. We don't have a downtown, and how do you do that? So we did all of that at the arena outdoors and used the facility, the arena, as a backdrop, and really had a tremendous event. And, it was just a great experience for me to get to go through that, because nobody writes a book on how to put on a Stanley Cup finals, parade and celebration. And at 33 years old, hands it to you and says, how do you do it? So we had a lot of great people around, and we pulled that off. And that was, one of those experiences I'll never forget. And, a month or 2 later, we all got to get on a plane and go down and go to the White House and go through, there and take our pictures in the Rose Garden and, meet the president at the time, who was Bill Clinton. And so it was quite an experience, and one I'll cherish for the rest of my life. But
Wow.
so that was a great one. And from there, I was able to actually move to Boise, Idaho. I thought I wanted to stay here and raise my kids in this part of the country, and felt like I had gone and done that at the major league level. So I felt I could maybe just find my niche now and stay here. But as it turns out, I was recruited to go down and build a AA baseball stadium in conjunction with the Texas Rangers for their AA team outside of Dallas in the Frisco, Texas area. And so did that, went down there, and it was, we started from scratch. It was a dirt lot, and we built this tremendous ballpark that was named the ballpark of the year, and had a run that was, really unexpected. We had, we sold out every game for 6 or 7 years there, 10,000 people. And just, it was really the talk of the town. And we were in a town where it's not, people said, how are you going to do a minor league team in Dallas, Texas? We have the Cowboys, and we have the Rangers, and we have the Mavericks, and we have the Stars. Who's going to go to a minor league game? But we dressed it up and put it, made it an entertainment capital, and really catered to the type of people that want to go to sports in Dallas. And so it went really well. And so that was another good experience. And, when we were done there, I actually partnered with a few guys in Dallas, including Donnie Nelson, who his dad was a Hall of Famer with the Celtics and as a coach in the NBA. And Donnie was the president of basketball operations with Mark Cuban there with the Mavericks. And we partnered up, and we bought the Mesquite Rodeo. So we did something that none of us had ever done, but the rodeo was kind of downtrodden. It's the oldest rodeo in Texas. And we were able to go in there and fix it up and put in video boards and build a restaurant. And we really tried to make it an experience and not a rodeo by itself. We also did something that I don't know if it had been done before, but we built a metal cage, and we tucked it into the roof, and when it came time for the bull riding, we lowered it to the floor right in the middle of the arena. And we basically sold the inside of it to different parties each night, and they could come and have drinks and whatever inside while the bulls were coming out and being ridden, and they were protected with this metal steel cage. So that was another really kind of signature piece and something unique we did. But, I had never been around the rodeo world, and it turned out to be a wonderful experience. And, and getting to sit out back after rodeos after the perfs on Friday and Saturday night, and cowboys are bringing their guitars and playing horseshoes and, you know, drinking some beer, and they'd bring a half a steer up and barbecue it there, and we'd eat at midnight. And it was and the cowboys are just the coolest guys. I mean, I've been very fortunate to be around minor league baseball players, you know, all levels of hockey players, and these cowboys who, you know, I just learned something from each of those different cultures. And the one thing though, they were all really tremendous people and to live with and be around and represent. So I've been very fortunate to learn from all those things. So when I was there and we were finishing up there and felt like we had gotten it to where we wanted to get it to, I got a call from Jim Lights, who was about to become the new CEO of the Dallas Stars. And the Dallas Stars were being purchased by a Canadian out of Vancouver, British Columbia, and Tom Gallardi. And the Stars were actually in bankruptcy, and they had lost a lot of good employees. They had lost their season ticket base. They had lost their good players because they didn't have any money to pay them, so they lost them in free agency. So again, about to take on a new experience where trying to bring a business out of a bankruptcy and help them to rebuild and rebrand and reposition themselves in the market. And, you know, over the course of several years, they did that, and the Stars are now really a stronghold again, and not only in Dallas but in the NHL. And I think we'll be competing for a Stanley Cup soon, and their arena's sold out every game. And that was another great experience to you know, take something from, you know, really downtrodden and to rebrand and rebuild it. So I was very blessed to get to be a part of that. And so that really kind of, I went back to USHL, which is a junior hockey league. A lot of players get drafted out of this league. It's in the Midwest, and I spent 3 years in Michigan rebuilding their business and getting them back into a competitive situation. And actually, the first year there was named Organization of the Year, and which Muskegon had never been honored with before. So that was very gratifying. And so I finished up there, and now I'm back in Boise, Idaho. In fact, I'm out on a patio overlooking Hillcrest Country Club, and it's just so beautiful here in Boise. And I've tried to live in Boise since 1980. I've been trying to stay here, and never, you know, different opportunities kept arising. And so finally I'm here now, and I'm about to hopefully take on a tremendous project where I'm working with Fellowship of Christian Athletes. FCA has made a commitment here to build a facility, a sports complex that we hope will become a dream for the Treasure Valley and state of Idaho, and really the whole Pacific Northwest. And we're hoping that we can build a nice facility for hockey and football fields, basketball, volleyball, wrestling, baseball. We'd like to become the Pacific Northwest location to host the, you know, Little League regional World Series finals here. Ironically, the Pacific Northwest is the only region of Little League in the United States that doesn't have its own facility. All the other facilities in the United States that have their regional final, where the team that wins there goes to the Little League World Series, they all have their own complex. So the Pacific Northwest has been going down to Southern California and playing there for the last, 50 years. So we're hoping to build a complex that will house Little League and the regionals and be televised from here. And the Pacific Northwest can finally have a place they can call home and do that. So that's where I sit today. And I know I gave you a lot, and it covers a lot of years. That's what all the gray hair, that's where it all came from. But I don't know what questions you have or what you'd like to touch on, but I've certainly been blessed and have enjoyed all these experiences. They all presented different challenges, but I was fortunate enough to work and get to mentor a lot of young people who are now working in major league sports at vice presidents levels and presidents levels all over the country. And in fact, one of them, Hunter's right there in your hometown of Tacoma. Aaron Arvin's the president of the and general manager of the Tacoma Rainiers, and they've really had a tremendous turnaround there. So getting to stay in touch with all those people that I've, you know, had the pleasure of working over all these years. Or some of them are in the NBA and some of them in the NHL, and a couple of them are running minor league AAA baseball teams. And so just getting to share that with them has been a blessing for me.
Yeah, that's, I mean, such an incredible story and career path. And we just appreciate you sharing it all with us. I know I've gotten to hear bits and pieces over the conversations that we've had, but it's cool to kind of see it chronologically and how it's played out for you in your career. And also, you mentioned just being able to sit here in Boise, Idaho on a beautiful evening now. And Boise is one of those places that I feel like people always end up finding their way back to, whether it's for another season of life or for a longer period of time. So that's awesome that you were able to finally call it home after all these years. But man,
Absolutely.
what an amazing just journey you had. You never know where it's going to take you, but you said yes to each opportunity and the experience that provides with just different sports, embarking on hockey and baseball and even dabbling into rodeo. I mean, that's just amazing and something I'm sure you never saw coming for yourself, but it's something that you say yes to each opportunity and you don't know where it leads, but you know that there's got to be something on the other end of it. So that's just amazing. And we appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I never, from the time in the first time in Tri-Cities, Washington, with the Tri-City Americans of the Western Hockey League, that was 1988, and I never settled anywhere for more than 5 years. So it was 3 to 5 year stints everywhere. But when I ended up getting recruited to go down and build the baseball facility for the Frisco Rough Riders, that became home for 15 years, and I was so happy that that happened, because I didn't realize what an opportunity it was going to be for my children. I have my daughter Casey and my son Greg. They both were exposed to such great coaching and competition and getting looked at in the Dallas area. And my daughter was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to go play soccer at Texas Tech, and started there 4 years and was the captain 2 years and the most valuable player senior year, and just had an unbelievable experience, and graduated in 3.5 years and is now an interior designer in the Dallas area. And my son was the bat boy and for the Rough Riders, and being around that whole environment, I think really gave him a lot of exposure and to what he wanted to do for a while. So he ended up getting going, was the catcher at University of Texas Arlington for 3.5 years, and got drafted by the Brewers and was able to play 3 years in their minor league system. So I was just, more than all my own personal experiences, having the children be able to come out with that, and to watch your children go on and succeed and be grounded and faithful, and to see them get their degrees and get to participate and be a student athlete in college was just, that was probably the biggest blessing I've ever had. So it's all been great. And I would just, encourage people, you have the opportunity to be a part of sports in any way, shape, or form. I think it builds a lot of character. It teaches you a lot of lessons. And, we were talking just today, in fact, I had lunch with Gene Blameyer, the former athletic director of Boise State, who did so many amazing things for Boise State and putting them on the map nationally, and, inventing the blue turf, if you will, and hiring great coaches and building facilities. But, one of the things we talked about is we thought we both had been in Los Angeles. He was a player at UCLA, a football player. And we saw the riots and the Rodney King stuff back in the 70s and 80s. And we thought that was the peak of the tension between Black America and white America. And, we were talking today how it's at an all-time high now. It's higher than I've ever seen it. And we both were talking about how many great friends we have that are African American, and we had a bond. We athletes all had a bond, white athletes and black athletes that played together because you were united in a similar cause, and you learned about each other. And I mean, we've got tremendous friendships today because of that. And that's one thing that sports does, is it brings people together and it unites them. And I'm hoping that this facility that we're working on now is going to be one of those things to help bring people together, all kinds of people, all kinds of nationalities and demographics and income levels, to show them that, hey, we don't need to be in this place that we're in this world right now, that we can make a difference and help bring people together. So really hoping that that's something that comes out of this.
Yeah, wow. I mean, that's one of the coolest things about sports as a whole, is that it brings people together. It doesn't matter where you're from, what you look like, how much money you have, how much experience, or if you just want to get out on a ball field take your pick. And it gets people out there. I mean, Duncan and I would say the same thing, and I'm sure you would say it too. But our best friends of our whole lives are from playing sports, and our lifelong friends that we've known from the beginning really are from playing sports. And like Duncan said earlier, like forming a bond with you, just start to strike up a conversation, and it's talking about sports, and it really does bring people together. And I think that, like you said earlier, just being a hub for the Pacific Northwest there in the Treasure Valley is going to be such an awesome opportunity for, I mean, and you want to benefit kids as much as you can, but especially creating that next generation too, and paving the way with sports and opportunities like that. That's so amazing.
Well, kids are drifting right now. COVID obviously started it, and there's a lag going on with it. And obviously with technology, I walked in today and there was 5 young kids sitting at eating lunch. They all had their heads down on their phones, and we got to get people talking again. We got to get people playing team sports, and I admire people that do individual sports and stay active, and that's awesome. But being a part of a team thing, just and being a part of coaches, and one of the things that we'd like to accomplish along the way too is, parents need to get educated. We can work with kids, but once they leave and get in the car or go home, if the parents aren't on the same path that we are as coaches or mentors, the kids are confused. So we hope that there's going to be a parallel path with parenting as well. And the days of having dads, we want to create an environment where kids can participate and learn the right things about being involved with sports, and not about how good you are, how many goals you score, or getting paid to score goals by their parents. I mean, the parents need to realize that they're sometimes doing more harm than good in some of the things they're doing. And so we're hoping that parenting will be a part of our cause too. And we hope that this is just a start of things that'll go on around the country, because it's time that those of us that have had tremendous experiences in our life help to reassemble the youth of our communities and get them back to communicating again, and digging in and working hard and listening, and getting knocked down and getting back up, and realizing that, hey, it's not all about entitlement.
Yeah, I think that you're exactly right about that. I mean, we've seen how COVID has changed so much in the world, and youth sports being such a big thing that was impacted in those 2 years that really things were shut down, and the
Right.
kids were without a sense of normalcy. That made me think of a question. What would you say, just from your experience in the sports industry or from what you've seen, is the biggest lesson that kids can take away from sports? Obviously there's skills and there's things to get you to the next level and the next level, but overall, what would you say is the biggest thing that kids can take away from just experiencing sports?
That's a great question, and I don't think there's a single answer, but I know that what I took out of sports and what I hope we get to give back is, number one, working as a team. It's not about you. And what I saw in New Jersey from a Stanley Cup championship team is, Lou Lamoriello talked about it being like a symphony, an orchestra, and that everybody has their instrument, their special skill, and something they bring to the table. None any better than the other. And if any is playing well and another's not, the music doesn't sound good. So it's about getting everybody to know that they have something to give. And when everybody's playing well and they're all on the same sheet of music, then the music sounds outstanding. And I think just the fundamentals of working as a team, of listening and being coached, learn how to be coachable. So many kids today are not coachable, and they'll run off and quit. College sports is a little bit out of control right now, where kids can go into a school and leave a month later and all of a sudden be eligible. There's no, hey, I need to stick with this and see if I can fight through it. It's about, well, if it's not going good for me, I'm gonna leave. So I hope intercollegiate athletics addresses that soon, because it's a little bit out of control. So just those basics of learning how to work as a team, about learning how to be coachable from coaches and have respect, learning how that you're going to get knocked down, And it's not about matter of if you do get knocked down, because you're going to. It's a matter of how do you get up and with what attitude, and what did I learn from that, and how can I fix that moving on. And so, those are the fundamentals that I hope, we'll get to continue on with.
Yeah, and I love that word, being coachable. I love that concept, the idea of that. I've seen it apply to my life in so many ways, whether it was in college in different, volunteer organizations, or being part of different teams or groups. And then in the first couple jobs that I've had just straight out of college, being able to demonstrate to how, I would pride myself on being a coachable person, and it's in different settings that I think is really valuable. And so you're right, like even starting from a young age, and then, when it creeps into, the way that the whole dynamic of athletes is in college right now, and then that's what the young kids are looking forward to, and that's their idea of a role model. And then, those college athletes become the pros that kids look up to on TV and everything. You look at, NBA, for example, or Major League Baseball, just some of the antics of players who, aren't, don't have the best sportsmanship and don't have the best
Right.
quality out there. And
Right.
that is what our kids are seeing on TV right now. And it's sad. And I think you're right that going back to the way that things have been, and it's been that way for so long for a reason, and it's because it works. And I really like
Right.
that coachable idea.
Right. When you talked about your first jobs, a quick story. When my first job out of college was at something, it was called FedMart. It was similar to a Target, and I got put in to run the major appliance department. And I thought, how cool. But you know how I quickly learned something? All the different departments in the store, they didn't work together. They took care of their department. They didn't come over to help you if you needed help. People, not all of our employees wanted to cover for other employees. And it was a concept that was so foreign to me, because I had been playing team sports where it was all about working together as a team. That's all I knew. I never said, no, I can't help, or no, I'm not going to cover for you. And so I learned a lesson in that first job. And I said, if I ever have the chance to manage people and run teams or run businesses, that I was going to make sure I hired people that wanted to work as a team, knew how to get knocked down, and were looking out for each other. And I think the successful businesses of the world are ones that are working together as a team, and they have a lot of former athletes or people that know how to, were in team sports as a youth. And I think they're the more successful businesses, and they don't have the same struggles with employees that a lot of other companies do. Those companies are hiring people that are, they may have certain skill sets, but they're only taking care of themselves. And, it goes back to that coach saying, hey, are you going to play for the logo on the front or your name on the back? And you got to find people that are willing to play for the logo. And that's that in business too.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more, because I've seen, even in my early days in college, I studied communication. And so you see people that are in there and they want to learn and they want to work together in a team, but you see people on the other end of it that they don't have those people skills. They don't have that sense of sportsmanship to be able to support other people. And Hunter and I are both big fans of football, and I was fortunate to play through high school, but we just love the game and played from a young age. And just like your department store example, if each position group in football doesn't work together, there's no way you're going to win a game. You look at the last 10 Super Bowl winning teams, and what did they have in common? It wasn't just a good offense or a good defense. There was probably strengths on each, but you have to bring all of those strengths together to see a common result. And so I think that that's such an important lesson that both of us learned from sports. And even someone today said, man, you're serving your team in a way that I haven't seen. And I said, well, that's what we're here to do. We're here to help each other out and work together. And that's a humbling thing to hear, because I know that it's a result of playing sports and something that I wouldn't have learned without that.
No doubt, Duncan.
Well, awesome, Mike. One final question, and then we'll get you on your way. We really appreciate your time today and just all of your insight. But I wanted to ask, what would you say is the most, or one of the most memorable experiences from your career, whether it was one of your Stanley Cup championship teams, or if there's anything else that you took away that is just, it stands out above the rest.
You know, I've been so blessed to have had so many, and really I have a single one or two great memories from every step that I had. But I guess the ones that would pop into my mind first are that first phone call I got from, you know, the president and GM of the New Jersey Devils. You know, to this day, I don't know how he even knew about me, because I'd never met him. And so to get that call, to for all your hard work, and to get that call to say, hey, you have a chance to go to the big leagues, that certainly stands out. And then obviously winning a Stanley Cup and going through that whole experience, you never lose that. And, you know, having a Stanley Cup ring, you know, which I've already passed on to my son, and to have that, you know, was a blessing. But and then lastly, which maybe is still foremost in my mind, is just seeing my children get to go into intercollegiate athletics and participate in a team environment. And they have all those characteristics that they learned through that time that's carrying them today. And, you know, I just encourage parents, not all kids are going to play intercollegiate sports, but you're learning those lessons at age 7 and 8 and 10 and 12 and 15. You know, get your kids in sports, let them learn lessons, let them get knocked down, let the coach advise them, don't be their coach, and let them have fun and find their way.
Definitely. Yeah, I love that. And that's something that you said earlier that I forgot to touch on, but it's not a matter of when you get knocked down. It's when you do and how you choose to respond to it. And I think that's huge, and that's something that I hope never goes away in any of these generations, because that's one of the biggest things. I mean, if you ask Duncan or I, we were raised with the most perfect childhood that we could have thought of, but we were ready for anything that was thrown at us. And, you know, I hope that gets on to the next generation. And I hope, yeah, you're right. These coaches are put in positions, whether it's a little league team or a major league sports team, those coaches are put in positions. They don't need all these outside voices weighing into decisions and everything. They were selected for a reason, just like a boss in an office or any manager role or anything. And I just think that people need to put their faith back in the chosen people that are put into those positions for a reason.
And a comment on that: sports is not about how far you or your kid can get. It's about what you can take out of it, and then what you can give back. And those lessons and those memories you have, we're all going to stop playing at some point, whether it's little league or junior high or high school or college, right? We're all going to have to step out from that. But what we get to take into businesses or into schools as teachers, or into our job, wherever that is, you know, those are the lessons and the value that we get to have out of that. And that's what we need to get back to teaching people again, not about getting medals and how good you can be. Some people are naturally that's their path. They are going to go on. But the rest of us, we're going to get to participate in other ways. And I just encourage parents to get their kids reactivated into team sports again, and find good coaches that are going to mentor their children in a healthy environment.
Definitely. I couldn't agree more. I think it's such a valuable lesson that's so unique to sports that I think anybody who's ever played sports at any level for any amount of time could agree with that for sure. But Mike, we just appreciate it. Thank you so much for the stories, the insight, and just your time tonight to learn a little bit more about you and where you've come from, and the lessons that you've learned along the way. I think knowledge is power, and your willingness to share that with the people that find this podcast. Some people might stumble upon it tomorrow, and some people might stumble upon it in years down the road, but whoever listens to it, I think will definitely walk away with a good piece of information. And we really do appreciate you sharing and taking your time to talk with us.
Thank you. I appreciate you asking me to come on, and hope that we can continue doing the things we're doing right now. And Duncan, I think we're going to do some great things working together and trying to make this sports complex become a reality. And Hunter, I look forward to spending more time with you again. And guys, thanks for your time.
Definitely. Yeah. I can't wait to see what happens. And like Duncan said, Boise is a hard place to leave forever. And the Treasure Valley is a special place. and God's definitely working in that area. So it's cool that he chose you to pursue that opportunity there, and I'm excited to see what happens.
Thank you very much.